Welcome to the latest episode of The Shattering Place. Today, I have had a conversation with Edward Tick, PhD, who is an archetypal psychotherapist, author, educator, poet, international retreat, pilgrimage leader, and much more. His expertise is healing the invisible wounds of war and violence, and also specifically around ancient Greek healing practices and including the origins of medicine and psychotherapy. He was the U.S. military subject matter expert on PTSD and moral injury for a decade. He's written 9 or 10 books that have been translated into several languages, including most recently his book Warrior's Return is being translated into Ukrainian and Russian as we speak. In addition to his private practice, Ed has led more than 40 pilgrimages to Greece and Vietnam for holistic and spiritually based healing, the psycho-spiritual cultural healing of war trauma and restoration of ancient healing practices for our times. He leads on-the-ground experiences that include a number of interesting holistic practices, which we discuss in this conversation. Some of the highlights of our chat include understanding the healing power of ritual, myth, and pilgrimage and community. Healing is not just about talking and listening, it's about so much more. And he has really committed his life to evolving healing practices specifically around PTSD into an identity restoration using some traditional and holistic methods embedded in a pilgrimage experience. It was a juicy and in-depth conversation. I just hope that you enjoy it as much as I did and that you check out some of his books, which are incredibly fascinating, hearing from veterans of various wars who've done this in the groundwork with Edward on his many retreats over the past few decades. So enjoy, everyone. Also, thank you so much for listening to or watching this podcast. If you are enjoying it, I really would appreciate if you like and follow me on YouTube and also on whatever audio podcast that you're listening to, and potentially leave a review. It really helps with a new podcast like this, which is my solo project, which I do all by myself. If you want to have more contact with me personally and join a really lovely community of people who are committed to doing not just the inner work of healing and awakening, but who are also interested in that global healing, collective evolution piece of it, then consider becoming a member of my Substack community or my recently created Patreon community. So both communities have the opportunity, offer you the opportunity rather, to join my monthly Zoom community calls where we do processes, nervous system regulation, and also connect with each other. It really depends on what platform you're most comfortable with. Some people love Substack, and you then have access to all of my writing, my articles. Some people love Patreon. It has different options, but for both memberships, you get really the same thing. So the links are all below in the show notes, and I look forward to connecting with you soon. Welcome, Ed, to the Shattering Place podcast.
Thank you very much, and I'm honored to be with you.
Well, I've been really looking forward to this interview. We had to reschedule it, didn't we? Both of us had illnesses. It was a week later than expected, but in that time, I, with great delight, read more of your books. So I've now read 4 of your books, and have just been enjoying them so much. And I can say now that really you're someone who has dedicated your life as a therapist, as a thinker, philosopher, traveler, to working with healing the wound of war with those who are veterans suffering from PTSD, and in a really innovative way that I'm sure, I mean, it's not something I had heard about before I came across your work. I'm sure most people aren't aware of this, but what Ed does is take people on pilgrimages and really bring into their healing this traditional Greek approach to healing trauma, which we will definitely go into. But just to begin, I'll just note that what really strikes me is, living in this therapeutic world as we both do, if someone is suffering from PTSD, particularly, well, any kind of anything really, but PTSD from war, I guess what people normally think that we do is we go see a therapist, we sit down, we have our 10 sessions of CBT, or maybe even now EMDR. In any case, we sit with a therapist, we have, interaction, talking, listening, and that's how we conceive of healing in our modern therapeutic world. And as I always say to my clients, healing is in everything. Healing is in singing, healing is in dancing, healing is spending time in nature. But what you do is so much more than that, and so much more effective, so much, it has a deeper, more profound, effect on people. So I would just love to begin there. And yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Where have we gone wrong in the evolution of our of therapy in the world?
Okay. So, first, thank you for having me on your podcast. Thank you. And secondly, thank you for reading so many of my books rather quickly. I have 9 published books, and so you've read almost half of my published work, and I really appreciate that. And I don't know, but you may hold the world record for reading the most number of my books in the shortest time period. So I love it. So as far as I know, you've got the gold medal for that so far, and I'm going to hold other people up to that. So
yes.
Thank you. But actually, that we can use that as a starting place in a couple of ways. One is you immersed in my work by reading so much of it. We were originally going to meet over my most recently published book, Passage to Poros, and that would be wonderful. But but because we were delayed and you kept reading, we can discuss that work and all of the work in a much larger and holistic context. So we'll go that way. Secondly, I want to call everybody's attention to the wonderful name of your podcast series, The Shattering Place. So to all of our friends out there, allow yourself to be shattered so you can be reborn. And relating that specifically to violent trauma, war trauma, and any and all forms of violent trauma, it shatters us. However, that's not the end. When we experience violent trauma, we are going through potentially a death-rebirth process. And the traumatic experience is the death, and we have the opportunity of going through a restoration and a rebirth. However, very few modern therapeutic techniques think this way, or think that trauma is actually part of an initiation cycle of the death-rebirth cycle, and we have to be shattered over and over and over again through the life cycle. Of course, trauma hurts the worst, and it's a violent and sudden and unexpected and uninvited shattering. Whereas if we go on a vision quest or on a pilgrimage, we're inviting the shattering because we want the transformation. We want to come out a different person. So I work with trauma in this manner, that it is an initiatory experience, and if we guide it psycho-spiritually, culturally, in wise ways, as traditional cultures did and ancient cultures did, but modern societies don't know how to do it. But when we do it spiritual based and digging back to the spiritual roots of our healing practices and using them, then trauma becomes a shattering and rebirth, a transformational process that takes apart the old self and gives us the opportunity to create a new and more functional self. I think of wonderful novelist Hermann Hesse. Simple one line in his novel Damien. It's what we're talking about. Who would be born must first destroy a world. So we're talking about death-rebirth. We're talking about the old psychic worlds that we lived in before. If we seeking it like on a vision quest. We're looking for the transformation. If we're in the military or rape victims or accident victims, we're not looking for it. Life gives it to us. Nonetheless, it is a shattering that gives us the opportunity to rebuild and, as one of the books in the trauma field says, be stronger in the broken places, wiser in
Yes.
wiser in.
Yeah. I think Peter Levine talks about it as remembering, as if we've been dismembered and the body is now coming back together after the dismembering.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And the Greeks know a lot. I mean, it's I'd love to share how you arrived at this tradition, how you became aware of it. But the ancient Greeks of course, knew a lot about war, because war is basically never ending for thousands of years. And I didn't appreciate until I read your books just how embedded war was in the culture. I think it's that, correct me if I'm wrong, young males would go into the army for 2 years from the age of 18, but then they were on active duty until they were 60. At any moment, they could be called up to service. Is that right?
That's generally right. We have to be careful when we're talking about ancient Greece, because there was no such thing as ancient Greece. There were all the ancient city-states, and somebody from they didn't call themselves Greeks. Somebody from Athens was an Athenian, a Spartan.
Okay.
Spartan, and their practices varied somewhat between the cities.
Okay.
So it's really important to be aware of that and to study the. So, for example, Sparta was a military authoritarian state, and boys, I think from age 6, children were separated from their parents at a very young age, I think 6, and boys lived with boys and girls lived with girls, and they were trained to be warriors from that age, and very, very intensely. So they had to go barefoot. They had to go without covering in the winter. They ate really, to our standards, really cruddy food. And what we know is the Olympic Games were war games that were being trained for war. So the Spartans began when they were children, and they were trained to be warriors for all their lives. And most of the other daily tasks were done for them by their slave caste, so that they were just training and practicing for war all the time. We could consider that an idealized form of an authoritarian society, militaristic authoritarian society. The other extreme, the practices are scattered, but what you're referring to is Athens, which actually gives us our great ancient values that we're all so in love with and try to learn from and emulate. So you're okay. Again, boys were trained in the Olympic Games from childhood, and gymnastics was a necessary part of their education, and the gymnastics were training for their war skills. So they were always training for those. In addition, you're right, and we don't do this. When they returned to 18, 2 years of apprentice warriorship. They didn't go into battle. They couldn't. They were like squires, like medieval knights had their squires who accompanied them and carried their equipment and helped them in the battle. Okay. So the Athenian youth, first they were trained as children and adolescents very intensely, and then they became apprentice warriors to learn what it was really like. The Native Americans did this too, to be exposed to combat before you were in combat, so you would learn what you are going to get into. Nobody knows how horrible combat is until they're there. So exposing young men, sometimes women, but usually young men, to combat situations and reality without putting them in it yet actually reduces trauma. It reduces the trauma because they're prepared. And you know,
Mm.
because you've read my work and we're more familiar, but I also lead journeys to Vietnam, and
Yes.
I work with Vietnamese, and I bring American veterans and others to Vietnam. The Vietnamese don't have epidemic PTSD the way Americans do for many, many reasons. And one of the reasons is what we're talking about, that Vietnam has been invaded for 2,000 years. So they have always sent their elders into the schools to talk to and prepare the young for that they're probably going to have to go to war someday. This is what it's like. We're not trying to traumatize you, so, don't talk about it in school. We're trying to prepare you as elders because we love you and care about you and want to protect you by telling you the truth about what you might have to face. So in Vietnam, among many other cultural and spiritual practices, significantly reduces trauma. Ancient Greeks had many, many, many practices for reducing the trauma. And in fact, the word trauma is an ancient Greek word. We would pronounce it trauma, and trauma. It means, originally means a stabbing or a piercing wound. But that's from anything. And you're a spiritual healer, so you get it. Our souls are penetrated by the violence of the world. We're all traumatized. Yes. We're not only talking about physical trauma, but anything, even things. The terrible things happening in the Gulf of Hormuz now. When a ship is attacked and rocketed, it's proper to say that ship is traumatized.
Yes.
And everybody on it is traumatized. And every one of us who hears about it is traumatized. Violence penetrates to our core. And back to how do we heal? We have to use what the Greek or Native American or Vietnamese Buddhist. We need spiritual path and practices because the traumatic wound is so penetrating that it touches and it infects and it changes our soul and our relationship to our soul. And so we have to have the most comprehensive and penetrating practices for restoring and healing the soul.
Yeah. One more. It's a soul wound.
Yes, it's a soul wound. And and world listening, anybody out there, we know of more than 80 different names this wound has had since ancient times. And most of them were spiritual wounds. It's been recorded. The first book we have, so the first written text that we know that has survived since ancient times is the Epic of Gilgamesh. So that's a Sumerian warrior epic that's 5,000 years old. PTSD is there. Read it, everybody. Read the Iliad and the Odyssey. Read the Greek tragedies. Read Native American testimony. What we call PTSD is everywhere. The Lakota, the Sioux people, called the wound that we call PTSD. In Lakota, it's Nahinapeap. And how that translates is the spirits left him or her. The spirits left him. It's a spiritual wound. It's a soul wound. It's in the Bible, for goodness sakes, all over the place. And how it manifests in biblical language or in Greek poetry language. Oh my God. All of the symptoms that we talk about today, but we give more clinical language to, is in the Bible, in Greek and Roman epics, but in much more poetic language so that survivors can relate to it. In the American Civil War, the wound that we call PTSD was called soldier's heart. What a good name. And I can't tell you how many vets I've worked with who say, yeah, I've got soldier's heart. Don't tell me I have PTSD. I don't want to be a clinical specimen, but you bet I have soldier's heart. My heart is broken. I was betrayed. I'm always sad. I'm remembering my fallen. Got soldier's heart, and it's a heavy thing to carry.
Wow. That so many things come to mind. So many things come to mind as you say that. I almost have had to take notes just to keep them in my mind. I mean, first of all, it's the wound as old as time, really, the soldier's heart, the wound of trauma in various forms. And it's something that has been around forever, but there's something about modern life and modern warfare and modern society and our relationship to it, which has complicated the healing process, interrupted it. Something you speak about a lot, and I imagine, because I've read them all very quickly, it might be War in the Soul, maybe Warrior's Return, where you speak about how there's this perversion of the healing process in the modern world. Of course, we often think of Vietnam and the moral injury and how these veterans came back to an America that rejected them and shamed them for their actions. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, really, isn't it? How I'd love to have you speak on that. But before that, I'll also say, as you were speaking about how children were trained, prepared for war in different cultures, and how that was normalized in a way as preparation, as a benevolent preparation. I think of all of these kids now playing war games and video games and thinking it's not really the same thing. I think it's part of a normal evolution of children to want to play at warfare. That's deeply woven into the human psyche, which you speak about a lot. This, the warrior archetype is something deeply woven into the human psyche. So of course children will play with war, they'll play guns and shooting and what have you, and that's evolved into these very lifelike, very real video games. And then of course in modern warfare, a lot of the training is done in that way, remotely, where you can drop cluster bombs just by a video. So it's totally divorced from the human impact, the human experience, that human grappling of flesh to flesh, eyes to eyes, and so on. It doesn't really prepare you. So all this is all to say that we're doing something terribly wrong in,
Yes.
in the world. And it seems to me that your work is a path towards revisiting and healing this wound, healing our relationship to that archetype of the warrior, which is incidentally so much more than just the soldier participating in a war. The warrior archetype is far more than that. So there's so many things you can respond with, but yeah, I'm very curious. What are your thoughts around that? I know because I've read the books, but I'd love for you to share, with the audience.
For sure. Well, thank you for all those thoughts, and everyone deserves lots of commentary. So we'll go where we go. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So to begin, yes, warrior is an archetype in everybody, men and women, peace activists and Buddhist monks, as well as Gestapo operatives, the people the most violent. So warrior is an archetype. We all have it. It does emerge naturally during the life cycle, and commonly we see it in young boys, but not exclusively.
Mhm.
And it needs to be recognized and developed and guided in the correct way. And our societies fail that miserably. Our modern societies fail that miserably. So traditional societies, well, we mentioned Greek societies. So they knew of the warrior archetype, and they knew they were responsible for training it, and all the training was universally built into their culture for all the males. Native American cultures are the same. In both cultures, women sometimes showed that they had a strong warrior archetype, and sometimes were also trained and included. And the Spartans, by the way, all the women were trained to be warriors. And the men were the ones who went elsewhere, and the women stayed behind and defended Sparta if they were attacked. So the women were fully capable of being powerful warriors in that society. So we're not saying this is a guy thing. It's very much culturally conditioned also. Uh, during the during the Vietnam American War, the Vietnamese had very, very many women warriors, and they consciously used them because that was an extra weapon. They knew an American soldier might pause for a split second if he saw a woman aiming a weapon at him, and that split second was all you need when you're in combat to be the victor. So all these are issues. All right, so everybody's got a warrior. We all need to have it train and develop it. Men who don't develop their warrior archetype tend to be soft. I want to be very careful and not be judgmental. This is not judgmental, but soft, more gentle, more sensitive, less assertive or aggressive. Those energies come from the yang. We're all made of yin and yang. So we could think yang is the male warrior energy that women also have. So when it's trained carefully, and when a society is profoundly responsible for how they train warriors and how warriors are used and how warriors are brought home afterwards, then we can maintain a healthy warrior archetype through the life cycle. But we don't do it. And now in modern times, homecoming, especially in the United States, and now in Russia, it's happening there, and a lot of places around the globe. It's horrible. But homecoming is profoundly inadequate and neglectful and abusive and betraying. Homecoming needs to be as long and complex and deep and careful as preparing somebody to become a warrior. Actually, we have to reverse the process. And we say this a lot in the military and veteran communities. We've got boot camps and advanced training camps, and the military spends hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars to create each warrior, and they spend almost nothing to bring them home. There are no reverse boot camps.
No.
When they're coming home, they want them. They ask for them. Where's my boot camp so I can become human again before I have to re-enter society? They've been dehumanized, but not how we usually mean by, you're dehumanizing that outgroup. No, they've been rendered dehuman because we've turned them into shadow warriors without awareness or control of their impulses and instincts and reactions. And so what we call PTSD is possession by the shadow warrior. And we're not going to try, it's actually wrong to try to help a veteran become a quote unquote adjusted civilian again, because they can't. Once a warrior, always a warrior, and it's a spiritual identity, and we want to help and support them in continuing to evolve into being elder spiritual warriors who can who have warrior wisdom and can serve and protect all of us.
Yeah. I think part of what you're saying is that when we're talking about the archetypal nature of the warrior, is that this is an identity that is more than just being in a battlefield situation. It's far more than that. It implicates an urge to protect, an urge to defend, spiritual protection.
Right.
The actual combat part of the warrior archetype is only one small part of it, but that's exclusively what society focuses on. So we've lost the nuances or the full spectrum of what it means to be a warrior archetype. And so we train the warrior just to do the one thing, but we forget the whole shape of it, so that when they come home and they no longer are, have access to that, they're not part of that combat world, they don't have the rest of that archetypal energy to rest in, to have an identity within that. So they become identityless in a way, because they haven't been given or haven't been supported to really step into the full scope of that archetype. And that's the work you do, is reintroducing them to the fullness of that archetype, so that they have a larger sense of identity and they're not limited to that. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's quite accurate. Well said. Thank you. Um, in the Greek tradition, there were two deities of war. Ares was the god of war. Athena was the goddess of war. Somebody with PTSD has become a servant of Ares, possessed by the berserker, the archetype, the negative, the shadow of the warrior that just wants to aggress and kill. And Athena is not. Athena is the positive. See, it's the feminine aspect of the warrior, even though she's butch. But no, but she's she protects and defends and only uses violence as a very last resort after diplomacy has failed. And that should be the watchword for the entire planet. Never use force or violence to try to get your way. Never, never, never. And the world mythology and spirituality teaches that. So yes, we're trying to restore a healthy, balanced warrior archetype. And yeah, and that's what homecoming should be about.
Yeah.
Not just a little rest and take your meds and go home. That's deadly. A Native American woman, veteran from the Korean War, I worked with, was met at the airport by her tribe. The entire tribe was on the ground in a huge medicine wheel, and she saw it outside, looking outside the window as the plane was landing. And they landed, and she wanted to run up and hug everybody, but the elders stood in between her and the tribe and said, "No, don't touch anybody. You're still full of war. You're still full of war. We're taking you into the wilderness for 3 months to take the war out of you." Right? And they did, and she became one of the clan mothers and elders of her entire nation. No PTSD, no moral injury, really, really healthy with extremes of compassion and warrior wisdom.
Yes.
The kind of elder that we can create when we nurture the warrior archetype into its fullness. And you at least said the core. You said the warrior archetype defends and preserves. That's it. As soon as it's made to aggress and destroy, it's being abused and wounded, and the agent of that will have PTSD and moral injury.
Yeah. I mean, there's a larger story here, Ed, which, we probably need another 3 podcast episodes to get into. But really, what you're speaking to is the loss of ritual and mythology and community in modern culture.
Yeah.
It's far beyond the warrior archetype. There are many other archetypes that we could say have been lost just through the way that we've organized our society, what we prioritize, the stories we tell.
Yeah.
Isn't that the case? Like,
Oh, yes.
there's an argument here for restoring ritual, restoring myth, restoring community. As you say, this person comes home from war and there's a tribe waiting. It reminds me of how we do, for example, childbirth, and women who, are have children and then they suddenly live in an isolated house in the suburbs and there's no community and they're alone with a baby, and then we say, well, you have, you're depressed because you have a newborn and blah blah blah.
Right.
Really, part of that is that we don't have the communities that humans are meant to have. We've lost that ritual, the ritual of women being around to help other women with childbirth and with holding the babies and raising children, the ritual of honoring the mother, of prioritizing that role in society. And so many women are made to feel other or less than because, oh, I'm just a mom. I mean, I guess it depends on your community, but really this is to say that just every aspect of life, we could say we're hungering. I often think that we have this spiritual hunger. I see it more and more in people, this hunger for ritual, for community, for meaning that modern society just doesn't give us. That maybe I'm idealizing a little bit what's existed in different cultures in the past, but I think that there's something in it. And I think your work shows that there's something in it, because when you read, for example, I think it's the soul medicine, where you really talk about your pilgrimages to Greece, and really exactly kind of the process you use to work with these warriors. What really comes through in that is how incredibly healing it is, not just at the level of the individual, but for their relationships, for their communities, for the larger world, because often they return from a pilgrimage and they give back to their community. They support others in their community. So it's a ripple effect. So I think the work you do is showing something much vaster than just what we need to do about the warrior archetype and PTSD and veterans.
Absolutely. Thank you for recognizing that. I'm honored. I love our warriors and our veterans, and I'm honored to have done the work I've done with them. But full transparency, I didn't begin this work because my original motivation was to help veterans. I began this work with veterans because my original motivation was, this is one of the most abused, misdirected, betrayed groups in our society. So working with them is working on America, is working on a collective unconscious of the United States. And I wanted to do whatever small contribution I could make for healing that. And I saw the veterans and their suffering as victims of what's wrong with all of us. So yes, to what you said, it's true. And that's a deeper reading of my books, and I appreciate that. My father was a World War II era veteran, and he didn't talk a lot as that generation. He almost said almost nothing. I didn't know what he thought most of the time. And he didn't even talk about my books. But once he kind of cuddled up to me and he whispered so nobody else would hear, "You know, Eddie, that book War in the Soul?" "Yeah, Dad?" "I know the book. What about it?" He said, "Everybody thinks it's about," he was from New York City, I'm talking like that. "Everybody thinks this was about veterans, but Eddie, I know beyond that, it's really an anti-war book. You're trying to teach everybody what war is and how horrible it is through the veteran stories." Thank you, Dad. That's one of the most important things he ever said, and one of the few times in my life where I knew he was listening deeply to me and who I am. But you just said the same thing. Yes. This was my way into massive socio-cultural, spiritual wounds that we all have. Thoroughly agree with you that everybody, just about everybody, is starving for community and spirituality, real connection to each other, to nature, to the cosmos. We both know, and in the mental health field is full of it now, about how people are turning to psychedelics. And psychedelics are the new magic medicine. I'm not talking against psychedelics, but what I do want to say is people are looking for non-normative, altered states of consciousness, experiences, for spiritual connection, and almost people have forgotten how to do it, and that there are many, many natural ways to do it, and taking a pill and putting a few hours aside is a quick and easy way to do it. And yes, it's good, and yes, it's life transforming, and no, it's not the only way. And yes, we can achieve spiritual connection through ceremony and ritual and immersion in and many, many, many ancient practices that are still around, or we can reawaken. And finally, to your comments about the archetypes. Carl Jung said, "In our age, the archetypes have all dried up." Well, yeah. So what do we do when something dries up? We water it. So to our audience and to the practitioners and the healers out there, water the archetypes, water the archetypes, water the archetypes. Stories, ritual, the arts, water the archetypes, and they will come back to us. Neglect them, don't water them, and they're going to continue to dry up, and people are not even going to know what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it creates a universality, doesn't it? A cosmic universality. It's an experience of knowing you're not alone in the universe. You're part of a larger tapestry of what it means to be human. Everyone has suffered in particular ways. We have stories. We have rituals around it. And when you tap into those archetypes, I think the first and primary experience is a realization that you're not alone, a realization that you are part of something bigger. It normalizes the experience to some extent,
right.
But then also there's medicine in that experience, and that's a great segue into the nature of the work you do with your pilgrimages, because there is ritual pilgrimage, groups of people traveling together. There is dream incubation, which I'm very keen to explore, and liminal space, but also this idea that there's sacred sites that have a particular, maybe we could say, energy or particular significance that are used during the pilgrimage to incubate dreams, to have experiences, to have rituals. So perhaps you could unpack that for us. I think that's, as you say, but I just will refer back to your comment about plant medicines. Absolutely, this is the case. And it's quite interesting to me. I interview people who lead plant medicine retreats, and there's so much excitement about it and so much research, which is great. One of the things that is a struggle with the plant medicine world is this idea of integration. So people go along and they have these experiences, but then how do we integrate that into the body? How do we integrate that into the life? So as I see it, that movement, how it's evolving is there's more and more of an emphasis on the group work that comes after, the integration that comes after. That is precisely the piece of it that's not missing in the traditional means to access these altered states of consciousness. That's something that society has already gotten right generations ago, eons ago, millennia ago, in this Asclepian tradition that you talk about. There's always been this integration.
Yes.
So it's interesting that that's the learning from that I see happening there, is moving towards something that if you already approached it from the way you're approaching it, already exists. It's woven into the very structure of it.
Yes. There's always integration, is also always preparation. I actually, if I can use this, I use sexual intimacy as an analogy. Everybody wants the orgasm. It's a lot of work to get there. And it's a lot of coming down afterwards. And we need to pay attention to the whole journey, climbing up the mountain and being at the peak and then coming down. And with the whole thing. So I'm initiated in the Native American tradition. I've done 5 vision quests with my medicine elder. With each one, he required a minimum of a year's preparation before we go out on the mountain. And boy, did we work hard. Prayer and meditation and purification practices and sweat lodges and other practices. And deep introspective work on our own and with guides, and really working hard to find our intention. Why are we putting ourselves through this, and how do we want to change? How do we want to come out? So that model of it's a long, slow climb up the mountain. We have a peak experience on the mountain that we've prayed for and prepared for, and we never know what it's going to be, and we shouldn't. And it's going to be traumatic. It's going to penetrate us deeply and change us. And then we have to come back down and slowly and deeply integrate it in similar ways. Prayer and meditation and artwork and working with guides and elders and integrate it into our lives. And in many traditions, with different people, we receive new names.
Yeah.
People on my Greek pilgrimages receive a Greek name. I've received Native American names. I received Greek names from my elders there. and I've received Native American names from my Native American elder. The names are really, really important because they show the spiritual rebirth that's happened and who
Yes.
the person is becoming now.
Yeah. What Native American tradition are you a part of, out of curiosity?
My teacher was born in Western Texas, the early part of the last century now. So he was half Shawnee and half Hispanic. And he grew up among the Apache and Comanche people who taught him from when he was a boy. And then,
Wow.
then when he became an adult, he actually became a Protestant minister looking for his spiritual path. Said, that doesn't do it. Then he became a psychologist and said, that doesn't do it. Then he went back to his Native American roots and he became one of the principal students of the Muskogee Creek shaman Bearheart.
Wow.
And so Bearheart trained and initiated him, and I did a 20-year apprenticeship with him. So in this, Bearheart's my grandfather, and William Wing Medicine Tagle is my elder in the tradition.
Wow, that must have such a rich impact on the work you do with your Greek pilgrimages and also to Vietnam.
Let me put it together. May
Yes,
I?
please. Please.
This is amazing, and really, and puts all three traditions together.
Yes.
All right. I've been studying the Greek tradition my whole life. So I fell in love with it when I was a boy. I read the Iliad when I was 10 years old. You know, I tell that story in one of my books. In 1987, I was 36. And I had been working with veterans for about 8 years by that point, 8 or 10 years. And so I went on a solo pilgrimage to Greece to study the ancient Greek warrior tradition because I knew it, and I thought there was so much war there, they must have known how to respond to PTSD. So what was the extent of PTSD and how did they respond to it and how did they heal it in their culture? So I went to a place called Epidaurus, it's spelled Epidaurus, which was the major healing sanctuary in ancient Greece. I went, there's a huge ancient theater that's still used for summer theater festivals. I went for the opening night, and the play in performance was The Trojan Women by Euripides, which is probably the greatest anti-war play we have in the world.
The Trojan Women.
The Trojan Women. I experienced an intense catharsis seeing that play. And I also asked, it changed me profoundly because I went into the theater thinking of myself as a psychotherapist for Vietnam veterans. And I was changed. The archetype of war, seeing the play and how it portrayed the suffering of all of war's victims showed me the archetype of war is the same everywhere, all times, all places. The politics don't matter, the uniforms don't matter, the weapons don't matter. It's the same archetype. And so I came out saying, I'm not just a therapist for Vietnam veterans. I'm called to be a healer of the warrior archetype. Okay. Same trip. Now we're on Poros. And you know this story because it's in the book, but we'll share it with the audience. My first trip to Poros was on that journey in 1987, a few days after I was at Epidaurus. And I was translating some Greek poetry from a poet who used to be in retreat on the island. And there's a mountaintop sanctuary of the the Poseidon, the god of the sea.
Poseidon.
I saved my hike up the mountain for my last full day on the island. So I put on my backpack and I carried, my tomatoes and cheese and olives and wine. 3-hour hike up the mountain. I got to the top. I saw the sanctuary of Poseidon just maybe, 50 feet in front of me. And what should come crawling out but a giant sea turtle? Giant, really big. And on its flippers pushed right up to me. And I sat down in front of it. And we looked into each other's eyes for about an hour. And then the turtle started to walk away and down the mountain. And I went into the sanctuary and prayed and prayed and prayed. What just happened, and how can a turtle get on a mountain? A sea turtle be on a mountain? Okay. How does this connect to veterans and to Vietnam? I was on that journey to learn about warrior healing and the Greek warrior archetypal tradition. I met a turtle in a very sacred place. The turtle in ancient times was a messenger of Poseidon, and the gods could shapeshift. So, okay, here's a divine message. And I came from the United States. Well, the turtle told me, don't go back to the United States, go back to Turtle Island. For our audience people who don't know, Turtle Island is the Native American name for North America. I went back to Turtle Island and I went searching for a Native American teacher, and that took about a year, but that's how I found William Wing medicine. There's more, all right? So Turtle changed Greek drama written by warriors, for warriors, changed me and healed me and changed my identity as a warrior healer and led me directly to this island and introduced me to the turtle, who said, go back to the United States. No, go back to Turtle Island and learn from the natives, who led me to my teacher, who initiated me over 20 years. And during that time, not only have I been leading journeys to Greece and using that tradition, but I've also began in 2000 leading healing and reconciliation journeys to Vietnam. And so I've led 19 journeys to Vietnam. And there's even more. The turtle is one of the 4 sacred animals of Vietnam. And there's a magnificent Vietnamese foundational legend called the Golden Tortoise about war and about turtle coming to help the Vietnamese repel the invaders and giving them a magic weapon. But then the turtle comes back to take the weapon back because the war is over, the invaders are gone. No more weapons, no war, no weapons, no attack. You don't need to defend, take it back, be back in spiritual balance. And so I work with the turtle and turtle medicine in Greece and in the United States and in Vietnam, and they're all together. And the turtle archetype has come to me in all these ways and changed my life and changed the way I work and brought me so many mysteries and wisdom, if I dare claim it, that it's extraordinary. And it's, as you keep saying correctly, it's all one big interrelated story. And when we can put some of the jigsaw puzzle pieces of the cosmos together this way, oh my God, are we not alone anymore? And the loneliness and despair goes away, and we're part of everything.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the story.
That's an incredible story. Do you still feel the turtle kind of as a totem animal or as a guide with you? Do you still experience the significance of that, or have you?
No, absolutely. Yes. There's even more. There's even more. Right? Turtle is one of Poseidon's messengers. The bull was also Poseidon's messenger. And Poseidon was the god of earthquakes, and the ancient Greeks believed that there was a giant bull that lived at the bottom of the sea that was Poseidon's. And when human beings fell out of balance with nature, that bull kicked and roared and screamed, and that was an earthquake. Okay. All right. Yeah. Astrologically, I'm a Taurus.
So am I, by the way. So am I.
Yeah, of course. So what's your actual birthday?
2nd of May.
2nd of May, yeah. I'm April 24th. So I'm 1 week older than you.
Well, my partner's also a Taurus. My father's a Taurus. I'm surrounded by bulls, you know.
Oh, no wonder you're such a powerful woman.
Yeah. We're all very stubborn around here. But I love that.
Stubborn.
I love that. Yeah.
And shadow and light. Our blessings and burdens are in the same place. Taurus is enduring and persevering, and the shadow is stubborn as can be.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love astrology. I just love in general all the symbolism, and I encourage people to play with it, because when you start to look at the world as not being just literal, but also being magical and symbolic, everything becomes magical. And it feels as if the whole world, the whole universe is speaking to you personally. Mm-hmm. And there's healing in that.
Oh, yes. That's another reason people are hungry for psychedelics. It's just wake up the right brain. We have become so dominated by left brain, logical, rational thinking that we've crushed spirit with hyper rationality. And so the arts, the humanities, the medicines, the rituals all awaken left brain, imaginal, poetic, intuitive thinking.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which is what
pieces they're supposed to be in balance.
Yes. Yes. And it's not in balance, because everyone is so in their logical brain and, you know, consuming information. It's all information, consuming information and logic. And out of that, it's something depth psychology, you know, has gone some ways towards restoring in certain circles. You know, not everyone is into depth psychology, but the contribution of that is reintroducing the magic, the symbolism, the archetypal into a therapeutic setting. But what you do takes it obviously to the next level, because it's not just conceptual, it's embodied. So I'd love you to speak on that piece, the embodiment of it, because healing isn't just, and of course I do somatic therapy, everything I do is bringing it back to the body, but healing isn't just thinking about it, conceptualizing it, experiencing it. It's living it somehow. It's how the body moves and reenacts. And in your work, as I understand it, there is that piece of it where there's an opportunity to do this, I don't know what you would call it, play there, where people can inhabit the roles of some of these Greek plays and inhabit these individuals, like Ajax, like Orestes, like whatever, and actually in the process of acting that out, there's an embodiment piece of it.
Yes.
But then there's also the pilgrimage. There's also going to places and walking and moving and having that physical experience. I mean, it's so important.
Yep. Yes. All of the above. Thank you. So if you and I decided that we'd be going to Greece together in a year, I would say right now, today, start to drench yourself in mythology again. I know you already have. Some people have, some people haven't. And choose the myths that move you the most. And of all those myths, choose the one mythic character that you feel really represents and replicates your own life story. Because what we're going to be doing together is learning and practicing living mythically. We're all mythic characters. We're not isolated, broken off individuals. We're all mythic characters, and we're all replicating the myths in our individual lives. And as you rightly said earlier, the more we identify with the myths, the less trapped in the pathology we are. We depathologize ourselves and our conditions by learning the archetypal and the mythic dimensions of it.
And is that how you work with your warriors? You encourage them to prepare for a certain amount of time, read the myths, so that when they go to Greece with you or Vietnam, they can enact it?
Yes, that's one of the ways. Yes. Hmm.
Yeah. And the dream incubation, I have to mention that because that's,
Yeah.
dreams are so powerful and so often overlooked or minimized, unless you're specifically working with a Jungian analyst who specifically is into that. But just as a mainstream thing, we've lost the art of working with our dreams, working with our unconscious in that way. And on your pilgrimages, you really work with it. You go to specific sites that have a sacredness to the physical location, and people, you sleep there. Is that correct? And
Hmm.
do you call for a dream? You ask for healing. There's a conscious part of it. Yeah, a conscious calling in of some healing.
Yes. Okay. First, one more quick comment about the warriors is that uh, we reenact Greek tragedy with Greek tragic actresses who have been working with
Okay.
it their entire lives. So we go really deep reenacting the tragedies. We do that. We go to the warrior sites. We go to Marathon where the battle happened, and Thermopylae where the 300 Spartans stood and defended, and to other warrior sites. We meet with Greek veterans and Greek military people I know to compare and contrast the stories in both cultures. We read, we study myths together, and we go to the sites where a lot of the myths actually happened. And we have really, really difficult questions. Okay. Where would you be willing to, what would you be really, what would you be willing to die for? Where would you take a last stand and be spiritually more satisfied taking the stand than falling there than returning to your home and to your family? Where did you serve, and do you judge it as moral or immoral? Were you an Athenian or were you a barbarian? And if you judge that you were a barbarian, what do you have to do, and how do you have to transform your life to identify as an Athenian? Questions like that. So the whole time we're together for 2 or 3 weeks on the journey, and the months or year beforehand, and working with it afterwards. We work.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's actually, sorry, I'm relentless. I'm gentle but relentless about doing the work. Now, to dream incubation. Okay, a lot of healers listen to this, so people would know. Carl Jung differentiated between big dreams that are full of archetypal content that are transpersonal, and little dreams, the more ordinary everyday dreams that are more just psychological information. So dream incubation is a ritual process for facilitating a big dream.
Yeah.
And it is the origin of medicine and psychology in the ancient Greek world.
Yeah. Ancient psychology that's thousands of years old, before Hippocrates and before what we consider the contemporary medical tradition. It's a very shamanic origin.
Yes, it began. The best we know is that it began in the mountains of Thessaly. We have complete records from 1400 BC, which is 1,000 years before Hippocrates. So that's and by then it was a fully developed shamanic tradition of people going into the mountains and with shamans sleeping in caves after fasting and praying and sacrificing and afflicting themselves, sleeping in caves in the wilderness, like it's a vision quest. You could call it a dream quest. And sleeping and staying in your sleep spot, in your vision circle, for as long as it takes until you receive a dream or a vision that either heals you or tells you how to heal yourself. So, as we said, that dates to 1400 BC. It was
incredible
for 2,000 years. Hippocrates, whom we call the the father of modern medicine,
Other medicine, yeah.
the son and the grandson of Asclepian priests, and grew up in the second largest Asclepian sanctuary in Greece on the island of Kos, and was trained in that tradition first. And
First, yeah.
bent medicine, he studied the spiritual medicine tradition of Asclepius and reinterpreted it scientifically. And
Yeah.
he was absolutely a naturopath. He did not want us taking drugs. He said, make your food your medicine and your medicine your food. He said, all illnesses begin in the soul and end up in the body. Treat the soul. Dig down into the root of your affliction, which is always in the soul. So, yeah. So even I'm working on an article. I hope, what would Hippocrates say? Because I want to critique our modern medical system from his point of view and all the things that he said and taught us that we're not doing wrong now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine he would have a lot to critique.
He sure would. He sure would.
It's great to see holistic approaches experiencing a renaissance, really.
Yes.
And so many of my clients, avail themselves of very different modalities in a more holistic way. I always encourage them. I always say that, we need a treatment team and not just one individual. And the group work you do is definitely part of that. It's incredibly powerful working as a group. And really, I want to say to those of you who are listening, if you yourself are a warrior, you're a veteran, and you're interested, I really do recommend reading some of Ed's books. I don't even know which one is the best. They're all good for different reasons. Like Soul Medicine, that book really has a lot of examples of specifically what happens on these pilgrimages with Ed in Greece and Vietnam. There are a lot of personal stories of veterans that talk about what they've experienced in war, the effect it's had on them, and how they worked through these processes to have these, really amazing outcomes. Just to understand the archetype of the warrior, War in the Soul is really helpful for that. Warriors Return, I'm a fan of all of them. Warriors Return, great if you're really grappling with what does it mean to re-enter society after this experience? But, it's such a fascinating conversation. I do encourage listeners to check out these books. I'll put them in the show notes, because there's so much to what you do. Really, it's just far beyond one conversation. Yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you for that too, because yes, I'm trying to contain it all.
Yes, I know. Well, it's 30, 40 years of work for you, so I can't even imagine what that's like. I would like to, as we move towards the conclusion of the conversation, I really love to hear your thoughts on where are we going? It's a really big question, so, but I'll put it out there. Where are we going with our evolution of healing modalities? I have a very small perspective of just my life and my practice on the ground. One of the things I love about the podcast and what I do is meeting others like you who are doing really innovative things in different areas. I don't really understand, are we outliers? Is there a change happening in another setting? How can we shift the conversation? I know, for example, that the work you're doing is creating this, even in Greece, it's allowing Greek people who are themselves healers, psychologists, therapists of different sorts to become reacquainted with their own traditions because you work so deeply with it. So there's that's happening as well in Greece because of your work. People are becoming aware that they have this amazing resource there that maybe they haven't appreciated. But what is your take on, where are we going as a that's one of the reasons I started this podcast, by the way, is to really ask these big questions. And one of my first season, which is a 10-episode season of a solo narrative podcast, is really me proposing a paradigm, which is that multidimensionality is the paradigm shift we need to heal this planet. And I use the word multidimensionality because I don't want it just to be spiritual or religious. I want to have a language that's inclusive, and so for me, the work you do is multidimensional. It's not just the seen physical materialist paradigm. So I think we are moving, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we are moving, and we're moving in a very, very intense and challenging way from my perspective. Um, we are in the apocalypse now. It's not coming, it's here. And not too many people like it when I talk this way, but that's okay, because we're trying to tell the truth together. Apocalypse means the destruction of the world as it is and as we know it. It doesn't mean the end of everything. It means terrible times when the old order falls apart and we experience, well, the four horsemen, and they're here: plague and war and death and famine. It's when everything falls apart, and because what has been repressed and hidden is revealed. Apocalypse is also a Greek word. Apokalypsos means take the cover off. Doesn't mean destroy everything. It means reveal what's been hidden.
Reveal
What's been hidden. So the experience we're having globally now is that all of the hatred and the death and the destruction and the poisons that have been hidden and somewhat under control for millennia are exploding now, and especially in the United States. The shadow is naked now. Robert Bly had a poem and an essay. It was called "The Tooth Mother Naked at Last." That's where we are. The devouring energy is naked. All right. Jung wrote about this also after World War I and World War II. He actually said there's nothing we can do except when the apocalypse takes over, the shadow is so powerful, we just have to allow it to burn itself out and put the world back together afterwards. All right. Yeah. So, in contrast to the apocalypse and all the things that are falling apart simultaneously with so many people around the planet, they're waking up. And alternative healing practices, alternative agricultural practices, protecting the climate, trying to stop the insane wars. People are waking up to this. So a lot of young people I work with, a lot of young people are in despair and quitting. Say, I'm not going to, I quit. I'm just going to be a hedonist. I'm not going to have children. Of course, the world's ending. But a lot of them are saying, the old system is falling apart. Capitalism is collapsing. It needs to, and I'm glad it's happening so that I can be here and be part of the solution. And there is so much positive energy and searching for solutions that are holistic and psychospiritual, culturals. We can't even say it. Everything is back into unity.
Yeah.
Putting everything back into unity, and it's all one piece of one big picture, and we have to be able to work through the whole thing. So going in both directions, I'm definitely not wise enough to say what's going to happen, because I'm hopeful for all the people making good change, and I'm very realistic about how much damage and destruction there's been, and humanity might not turn itself around soon enough for the human species. The cockroaches and coyotes and crows, they'll be fine. They'll be here.
Yeah.
Because they adapt to everything. Life adapts to everything, but humanity will. And we have to keep trying.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Yes, we do. Yeah. Well, the work you do is so important, and I really encourage people to look into it and just in general be open to the archetypal, the mythological, expand your conception of what healing means beyond just talking and listening, 10-session packs, and really give yourself the gift of paying attention to your dreams, paying attention to what the world shows you in terms of this magic, the magic of symbolism, the magic of signs, right?
Right?
And
Hmm.
thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your mission. I'm sure we'll have to have another conversation because I feel like we're only just beginning. And thank you for being here.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for helping people understand that shattering is a really good and necessary process.
Thanks.
You bet. Okay. Bless you.